My sister-in-law, a Nepo baby making $350,000 a year, dared to slap me in the middle of a high society party. I calmly called my father-in-law and said, "I want to fire someone." My husband's entire family burst out laughing, but the very next day, she was pale, trembling, and no one was laughing anymore. That evening, my in-laws' Beverly Hills mansion was brilliantly illuminated. It was a lavish housewarming party, packed with guests, the clinking of crystal champagne flutes, and the echo of cheerful conversations. Anyone looking from the outside would think this was a night of pure joy, a model of wealthy family perfection that people could only dream of. But no one expected that in just a few minutes, this supposedly peaceful sanctuary would turn into a gladiator arena. I, Lauren, stood in the middle of the luxurious living room, trying my best to smile despite the storm raging inside me. I knew that whenever my husband's family gathered in full force, especially with Harper around, trouble was inevitable. Harper was my 4-year-old sister-in-law. She had been working for the family company for barely 2 years, earning an absurd $350,000 a year, and her arrogance knew no bounds. And just as I predicted, a tiny comment from me, which was actually just a polite reminder, caused Harper to glare at me, flip her hair, and storm right up into my face in front of dozens of watching guests. Slap! The sound cut through the air, so sharp and cold that the entire room fell dead silent. I stood frozen, my cheek burning. The crowded party had just witnessed a sister-in-law slap her sister-in-law over absolutely nothing. As for my husband's family, not only did they fail to intervene, but they also displayed their usual, familiar smirk of satisfaction. I took a deep breath. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, and I didn't lose my temper. I simply pulled out my phone and dialed a number. The person on the other end picked up, and the deep, warm voice of my father-in-law echoed through the receiver. "Lauren, what's going on? Why are you calling me in the middle of the party?" I replied, enunciating every word so clearly and coldly that the people standing nearby shivered. "Dad, I want to fire someone." My husband's family erupted into roaring laughter. Everyone thought I was just bluffing. Everyone thought I had no real power. But they forgot one crucial detail, a detail only my father-in-law knew. And the next day, when the official notice was sent out across the company, when the fired name officially appeared on the memo, Harper's face went chalk white, her legs shook uncontrollably, and not a single person was laughing anymore. That afternoon, the Los Angeles breeze was light, and the late golden sunlight spilled over the exclusive gated community where my in-laws lived. Right from the gates, I could hear the roar of luxury cars and voices blending into a chaotic symphony. The influx of guests was so massive that private security had to direct traffic, while the catering staff ran back and forth carrying trays, setting up floral arches, and hanging fairy lights. The 3-story mansion was dazzling. The catered tables were set up on the sprawling lawn, draped in pristine white linen, with crystal glasses perfectly aligned and fresh imported flowers radiating a sweet fragrance. The atmosphere was buzzing. Everyone who arrived marveled at it. "Lawrence's business is really booming this year, huh? A housewarming party that looks like a royal wedding. He and Martha really know how to live." I heard it all, but I couldn't find it in me to be happy. I stood leaning against the second-floor balcony, looking down at the entire scene. The peaceful, luxurious exterior was just a facade. Beneath it lay countless conflicts I had endured during my 3 years of marriage into this family. The truth was, my husband's family was genuinely wealthy and successful, but it was equally full of relentless drama. And the center of all the trouble was Harper. At 24, she had been handed the title of Director of Project Management at the family firm. The title was purely for show. In reality, her daily job consisted of signing off on a few minor documents, showing up for PR photo shoots, and reciting a few pre-written lines in meetings that her assistant had prepared beforehand. Yet, she pulled in a salary of $350,000 a year. Compared to the market standard, this salary was astronomical, and it acted as fuel for Harper's inherent arrogance. She routinely threw around phrases like, "Money is not an issue for me." If my brother Henry hadn't married Lauren, he'd probably be married to a supermodel by now. "Whatever I want, Mom and Dad give me. Lauren shouldn't even dream of being treated like I am. I had stayed silent many times, but at this moment today, I knew things weren't going to be simple anymore. I adjusted my pale blue evening gown, touched up my light makeup, and walked downstairs. As soon as I appeared, a few relatives turned and complimented me. Lauren, you look gorgeous tonight. Lawrence's daughter-in-law always looks so classy. I smiled politely, but internally, I let out a soft sigh, because I knew that at any given moment, someone in this family would find a way to make me uncomfortable. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I saw my mother-in-law, Martha, standing with her arms crossed, eyeing me from head to toe. Her scrutinizing gaze made me frown slightly. Martha was notoriously difficult and profoundly disliked me. When I first got married, everyone thought she loved me because she was always calling me to do this or that. But after just a few months, I realized the truth. She merely viewed me as a high-end maid. If I was obedient, she praised me. If I crossed her even slightly, she criticized me endlessly. Lauren, you're finally down here, Martha said, her voice not loud, but just enough for the people around to hear. Yes, I replied gently. I was just helping the catering staff double-check the kitchen setup before coming down. Martha scoffed lightly. Leave that to the hired help. A daughter-in-law of this house should be greeting guests, not running around in the kitchen. I smiled. A daughter-in-law of this house? Curiously enough, I had never been treated like family. At that moment, Harper walked in from the patio. She was wearing a skin-tight red designer dress, heavy makeup, and strutted like a runway model on a red carpet. Seeing me, she smirked. Oh, Lauren, you're down? I thought you were busy upstairs reviewing my dad's speech for him. It was a blatant, passive-aggressive dig. I was the one who had written my father-in-law's speech for tonight, but Harper always wanted people to think I only did it to suck up to him. I just smiled. It's fine. I have everything prepared. She flipped her hair. Well, good. Just make sure you stand in a decent spot tonight. Don't let the guests ask what exactly you do in this house, and embarrass my parents. It was a brazen insult, right in front of everyone. A few aunts standing nearby exchanged awkward glances. I was about to turn away, not wanting to argue on a day with so many guests. But just as I took a step, Harper called out loudly, "Hold on a second." Everyone turned to look. I stopped in my tracks. Harper stepped closer, pointing at the dress I was wearing. Where did you even buy this? It looks so expensive. Must have cost a fortune, huh? Everyone knew she was intentionally picking a fight. Harper always loved to nitpick everything about me, my salary, where I bought my clothes, how much they cost, as if I didn't deserve to wear nice things. It was a gift, I replied calmly. Harper burst into loud laughter. A gift? From who? Let me guess. My brother bought it for you? Please, Henry doesn't even have the taste to pick something like this out. A few relatives chuckled along. Whether intentionally or accidentally, I wasn't sure. I had tried to keep my composure the entire time. But right at that moment, a passing waiter accidentally bumped his tray. A single, tiny drop of red wine splashed onto Harper's dress. It was a minuscule drop, but Harper exploded. She whipped around and pointed a manicured finger right in my face. Did you tell him to do that on purpose? I froze. I looked at the waiter, a young, terrified girl who was bowing her head and apologizing profusely. It was clearly an accident, but Harper didn't care. She stepped right into my personal space, the distance between us barely a few inches. I asked you a question. Did you tell this stupid waiter to spill wine on me? I furrowed my eyebrows. Harper, don't be ridiculous. This was just an ake. Smack. The sound ripped through the air. My cheek stung with burning heat. I stood perfectly still. The noisy living room suddenly fell dead silent. Dozens of eyes locked onto us. But before I could even recover from the slap, Harper screamed a sentence that made the entire party explode. You manipulative bitch. Did you think just because you've been a daughter-in-law here for a few years, I have to respect you? I took a deep breath. In my ear, I could hear someone whispering, "Oh my God, Harper has lost her mind." She actually slapped Lauren. What kind of messy party is this? But my husband's family? Not a single one stepped in to stop it. Not a single one protected me. They all just stood there watching. My mother-in-law even looked annoyed, as if this was entirely my fault. I stood up straight, wiped a stray speck of wine off my own hand, and miraculously regained my composure. Then, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. While everyone probably thought I was calling my husband or someone to complain to, the voice of my father-in-law answered. "Lauren? What's going on? Why are you calling me in the middle of the party?" I looked dead into Harper's eyes, my voice clear and completely unshaken. "Dad, I want to fire someone." The room gasped. Everyone's jaws dropped. Harper smirked, crossing her arms. "Fire who? Fire me? Who the hell do you think you are?" But I saved the answer for tomorrow. Because tomorrow, the name on that termination notice would make this entire family freeze in their tracks. The atmosphere in that magnificent mansion became so heavy you could cut it with a knife. The crystal chandeliers still blazed, the soft jazz still played, but the entire party of nearly 100 guests plunged into an uncomfortable silence. Everyone understood that what had just happened was no small matter. A slap in front of dozens of people, a slap from a sister-in-law to her older brother's wife. An unhesitating, ruthless slap. I, Lauren, stood perfectly still, holding my phone, head slightly tilted, my eyes strangely calm. My left cheek still burned, but inside me, something was moving quietly but powerfully. It wasn't resentment, and it wasn't the self-pity I had grown so used to. It was absolute resolve. It was time to end this. The moment I said the words, "Dad, I want to fire someone," Harper stood frozen for half a second before letting out a mocking scoff. My mother-in-law rolled her eyes in sheer contempt. "Lauren is throwing another tantrum," she probably thought. A few aunts watched as if it were a reality TV show. My husband, Henry, the man who should have been shielding me, just stood there, his face pale green, too terrified to react. But my father-in-law, Lawrence, was different. His voice over the phone wasn't amused like the rest of them. "What do you mean by that? Did someone do something to you?" I replied, my tone completely steady. "Tomorrow, you will know." Then, I hung up. My husband's family burst into laughter. It was a loud, challenging, mocking laugh. Harper put her hands on her hips and stepped right up to me, her voice louder than the music. "Fire who? Fire Emmy? Lauren, who do you think my dad is? Who do you think you are? This company belongs to my family, not you." I looked straight into her eyes. "Tomorrow, you will find out." A short, simple sentence. But it made Harper suddenly falter. Even if it was just for a few seconds, I clearly saw a flash of unease in her eyes. From the patio, the tables began to murmur. An older woman whispered, "Looks like this family's got some serious internal drama." A man sipping his bourbon muttered, "All that money and no class." A young couple exchanged a look. That girl in the red dress just slapped her sister-in-law right in the middle of the party. Insane. The whispers slithered through the air, like fire on dry grass. Martha caught a few of the comments. Her face flushed beet red from the embarrassment. She immediately turned to me, gritting her teeth. "Lauren, what are you doing making a scene for the guests to gossip about?" I let out a dry laugh. A laugh I didn't even know I was capable of. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I knew that anything I said right now would be pointless. If they wouldn't protect me when I was physically assaulted, there was no reason for me to explain myself to them. I simply replied softly, "I didn't do anything, Martha, but I will." That sentence made Martha scowl. What is that supposed to mean? I turned and walked away. I didn't want to stand in a crowd where anyone could say whatever they wanted. I needed to get away from the noise and catch my breath. As I walked down the long hallway toward the kitchen, Henry came running after me. "Lauren, just ignore her. Harper is young. She's just hot-headed." I stopped in my tracks. I turned around, my voice slow but razor-sharp. "Hot-headed?" She slapped me in front of 100 people. "You call that hot-headed?" Henry looked down. "I'm sorry, but please don't make a big deal out of this. Everyone is watching our family right now." I smiled bitterly. "Am I making a big deal out of this, Henry? I didn't do anything. Your family is the one making a big deal out of this." Henry looked up, panicked. So who are you firing? Please tell me you aren't going to sue Harper or do something crazy. I looked at the man I had trusted, the man I thought would protect me for the rest of my life. A man who was now more terrified of his family than he was protective of his wife. I spoke, emphasizing every single word. You don't need to know. Tomorrow, you will find out just like everyone else. Henry's eyes widened in fear. Lauren, don't do anything stupid. I didn't reply. I turned and walked away, leaving Henry standing alone in the hallway, the warm, ambient light casting long, fearful shadows across his face. When I returned to the patio, the guests had started their dinner. The soft jazz played on, but I knew everyone was still thinking about what had just happened. Harper, meanwhile, was laughing and drinking with her friends, as if nothing had occurred. I watched her from afar. She thought tomorrow would be just like any other day. She thought today's slap would simply vanish into thin air. But she didn't know. Tomorrow was going to be the first day of her life where she had to face reality. Because within the family company, very few people knew a tightly kept secret. I, Lauren, was the Senior Director of Human Resources for the Sterling Horizon Group. I held the absolute authority to audit, evaluate, and recommend disciplinary action for any mid to senior level management contract. And Harper, the $350,000 a year Nepo baby, had been under a performance investigation for months. I just hadn't pulled the trigger yet. I had been waiting, giving her chances. Tonight, she had personally slammed the final door shut. Tomorrow, when I walked into that corporate office not as an obedient daughter-in-law, but as the director of HR with full executive authority, the entire truth would be laid bare. And Harper would not be laughing anymore. The next morning, the sun was barely up, but harsh rays of light were already striking the glass facade of the Sterling Horizon Group headquarters in downtown LA, one of the largest real estate and construction conglomerates on the West Coast. I arrived at the office earlier than usual. No heavy makeup, no glamorous evening gown like the night before. I wore a sharp navy blue pantsuit, my hair pulled back into a sleek, low ponytail, my strides purposeful and absolute. Today, I was no longer the meek, enduring daughter-in-law. Today, I was the HR director responsible for overseeing nearly 500 employees. The heavy glass doors slid open, and the receptionist bowed her head respectfully. "Good morning, Miss Lauren." I nodded and walked into the expansive lobby. The bright white LED lights reflected off the polished marble floors. The corporate atmosphere was always strictly professional, but today, I felt something different. Curious glances, hushed whispers, people looking behind my back and quickly averting their eyes. News of last night's slap had spread like wildfire. I knew it, and I didn't care. As I approached the elevators, I ran into Mike, the marketing director, a friendly guy who had always respected me. He grimaced when he saw me. "Lauren, I heard there was major drama last night." I gave a faint smile. "Just family business." Mike sighed. "The company gossip mill is working overtime. I heard someone even recorded a video of it. Who knows if it'll get leaked online." I paused for a fraction of a second. A crowded party, of course. Someone had their phone out. I asked calmly, "Has anyone posted it yet?" "No, but the internal group chats are going crazy." I nodded. I wasn't surprised, nor was I panicked, because I didn't come here today to do damage control on a scandal. I came here to process a termination. As soon as I walked into my office and set my bag down, my assistant knocked on the door. "Lauren, the chairman is requesting you in the executive boardroom." The chairman. My father-in-law, Lawrence. I took the elevator straight to the 9th floor. The executive boardroom was brightly lit, featuring a massive, polished oak table. Lawrence sat at the head of the table. Next to him was my mother-in-law, Martha, wearing an unreadable expression. Harper was nowhere to be seen yet. Lawrence looked at me, his smile gentle, but his eyes piercing. "Lauren, take a seat." I sat down, my back straight, resting my hands on the file folder I had prepared late last night. Lawrence began. "I heard there was an unfortunate incident at the party last night. You called me and said you wanted to fire someone. I want you to explain everything to me right now." Martha instantly interjected. "What is there to explain, Lawrence? Harper is just a little hot-headed." She slapped her once. Big deal. They're sisters-in-law. It's not like she hit a stranger. I looked at Martha but didn't address her. I looked directly at my father-in-law and said, "Dad, I want to process a termination." The room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Martha shot out of her chair, slamming her hand on the table. "Lauren, are you out of your mind? Fire my daughter?" I replied, my voice icy, but crystal clear. "You have always stated that this company must operate on transparency, fairness, and accountability. Today, I am enforcing exactly that." Lawrence remained silent. His eyes weren't angry. He was evaluating me. I could see it clearly. I opened the file folder on the table. Inside was a comprehensive 6-month performance review of Harper. A list of projects she was assigned that missed critical deadlines. Client emails complaining about her severe lack of professionalism. Internal peer review evaluations. And a flash drive containing the video of Harper slapping me last night, which an anonymous employee had quietly sent to my inbox this morning. I pushed the entire stack toward my father-in-law. "Please review this, Dad. Harper is not only profoundly disrespectful to me, but she is a massive liability to this corporation. She earns $350,000 a year, and her performance metrics are below our absolute minimum baseline." Martha was furious. "Lauren, how dare you call my daughter incompetent?" I remained entirely composed. I didn't say it. The data says it. Right at that moment, the boardroom doors swung open. Harper walked in. She looked pale, completely lacking her arrogant swagger from the night before. She must have caught wind that I had been summoned to the chairman's office. "Mom, Dad, I heard people in the lobby talking." She looked at me, her eyes full of caution. I didn't look away. I didn't even blink. Lawrence pushed the thick file toward her. "Harper, this is your performance report. Read it." Harper opened the file, flipped through a few pages, and her face turned ghostly white. I continued, my voice dropping an octave. "This company is not a piggy bank for you to withdraw a salary from while doing absolutely nothing. And it is certainly not a playground where you can behave however you please." Harper gritted her teeth. You wouldn't dare do this to me." I looked at her, completely unbothered. "This is business. It has nothing to do with family." She slammed the file down on the table. "You can't do anything to me. This company belongs to my parents." The second those words left her mouth, Lawrence, who had been quiet this whole time, dropped his luxury pen onto the table. His voice dropped to a terrifyingly cold baritone. "Harper, enough with that attitude." Harper froze. He stared her down. "This company does not belong to your parents. It belongs to the corporate group. It belongs to the board of directors. And Lauren is the senior director of human resources with full authority to evaluate personnel. Authority that you signed off on." Martha gasped in horror. "Lawrence, what are you saying? When did you give her that kind of power?" Lawrence replied without a shred of hesitation. "When Lauren proved she was more than capable." Harper looked at me, her face completely drained of color. I knew this was the exact moment she realized she didn't possess a fraction of the power she thought she did. I slid one more piece of paper toward my father-in-law. It was a formal disciplinary proposal. Demotion from Director of Project Management down to Project Coordinator Assistant. Re-entry into a 90-day probationary period. Lawrence picked it up, read it, and gave a slight nod. Lauren followed proper HR protocols. "I will present this to the board for a vote." Harper screamed, "Dad, no. I am not working as an assistant. I will never be an assistant. You cannot demote me like this." Lawrence looked at her with profound disappointment. "I am not demoting you. Your own behavior demoted you." Harper burst into hysterical tears. Martha rushed over to hug her. Henry, who had been standing out in the hallway listening to everything, looked like he had been struck by lightning. I stood up and smoothed out my blazer. "The meeting is concluded. I will return to my office now." I walked out of the boardroom. Harper's sobbing echoed behind me, but I didn't look back, because I knew that, starting today, the lives of everyone in my husband's family had fundamentally, irreversibly changed. The meeting ended, but its aftershocks rippled through the 9th floor like a cold winter draft. As I stepped out, my heels clicked sharply against the polished marble floor. I caught the eyes of several employees, surprised, curious, mixed with an undeniable spark of respect. I understood. They had never seen the chairman's daughter face a formal demotion initiated by her own sister-in-law and executed entirely by the book. Someone whispered, "What's going to happen to the company now?" I heard the party last night was a total brawl. Miss Lauren is ruthless, but she followed corporate policy perfectly. The gossip trailed behind me all the way to the elevator. But I didn't care. My mind was focused on one single task, finalizing the disciplinary paperwork. Behind the boardroom doors that had just closed, Harper's wailing grew louder. "Mom, I can't take this. Why is Dad listening to her?" Martha snapped, her voice frantic. "Don't worry, sweetie. I'm not going to let her get away with this. She's just a daughter-in-law. Let's see how far she can push this." Henry stood in the doorway, scratching his head, his eyes red. "Mom," Lauren followed the HR guidelines. Martha whipped around. "Shut up, Henry. She is your wife. If you aren't going to defend your sister, then stay out of it, but don't you dare defend that woman." Henry was stunned into silence. He genuinely didn't know what to say. Lawrence sat silently, rubbing his temples. A moment later, his deep voice cut through the noise. "Harper, go back to your desk. We will wait for the board's vote and handle it then." Harper shook her head violently. "I am not working as an assistant. I would rather quit." Lawrence closed his eyes for a second. Then, he delivered a sentence that made the entire room freeze. "If you quit, I will not stop you." Harper's eyes bulged. Martha's jaw dropped. Henry stood paralyzed. Lawrence enunciated every single word. "This company is not a charity for you to play around in." I returned to the HR suite. On my desk sat a stack of files belonging to over 100 employees in the project management division. But I only needed one file, Harper's. My assistant, Lily, a sharp, quick-witted girl, rushed into my office, looking panicked. "Lauren, I heard you're filing disciplinary action against the chairman's daughter." I gave a slight nod. "Yes. Leave her file right there." Lily swallowed hard. You have guts. I'm terrified just hearing about it." I looked at her and smiled. "When you are doing the right thing, there is nothing to be afraid of." Lily looked at me. Her eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. "If it were anyone else, they'd be dead meat. But I believe in you." I didn't say anything else. I opened my laptop and logged into the HR management portal to input the formal disciplinary recommendation. The words appeared clearly on the screen. Action, demotion, title, Director of Project Management, is greater than Project Coordinator Assistant. Probationary period, 90 days. Reason for action: failure to meet KPIs, egregious violation of corporate conduct, actions detrimental to company reputation. Then, I clicked the button to submit it to the board of directors. A soft ding echoed in the room. The formal petition was officially transferred to the 6 members of the board. I knew this was going to trigger a tsunami within my husband's family. About 20 minutes later, my office door burst open with a violent slam. Martha stormed in. Her face was bright red, her eyes bulging, her footsteps heavy and aggressive. The entire HR department jumped in their seats. Lily leaped out of her chair. "Good morning, Mrs. Martha." Martha shoved past her and pointed a trembling finger right in my face. "What kind of stunt are you pulling?" The entire HR floor held its breath. I stood up, keeping my voice completely level. "Martha, please knock before entering my office." Martha slammed her hands on my desk. Bang. "I don't need to knock. I am your mother-in-law. Do you think just because you're an HR director, you're invincible?" I looked deep into her eyes. "I am following corporate protocol. I haven't done anything wrong." Martha practically screamed. "Harper slapped you once. It's nothing. Sisters fight. It's normal family business. You're blowing this out of proportion just to smear my family's name." I took a deep breath. Harper didn't just slap me. She slapped the reputation of this entire company. And she fails to perform her basic duties. A $350,000 salary for someone who makes this many catastrophic errors is unacceptable. Martha choked on her words for a few seconds, not because she didn't want to argue back, but because everything I was saying was factually correct. But she kept pushing. "What duties? She is my daughter. If she can't do the work, there are people to cover for her. Who do you think you are, going after the chairman's daughter? I replied without hesitation. I rely on corporate policy and professional ethics. Martha raised her hand, rearing back as if she was about to slap me. The HR staff gasped in horror. Lily screamed, "Martha, don't!" I stared straight at Martha. I didn't flinch, I didn't look away, and I delivered a sentence that turned the room to ice. "If you slap me, Martha, by tomorrow morning, you will have a disciplinary file on your record as well." Martha froze. The employees standing out in the hallway stared in shock. My mother-in-law slowly lowered her trembling hand, shaking with pure rage. You, insolent brat." "I am simply doing my job," I replied softly. Martha screamed one last threat before storming out. "I am not going to let this go. We will teach you what it means to be a daughter-in-law in our family." The door slammed shut. The air in the room felt as heavy as lead. Lily was shaking. "Lauren, aren't you scared?" I adjusted the files on my desk. "I am scared, but I'm far more scared of becoming a coward." 5 minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was my father-in-law. I picked up. Lawrence's voice was deep, slow, and tired. "Lauren." I reviewed the entire file. I was blunt. "Did I do anything wrong, Dad?" Lawrence was quiet for a few seconds before answering. "No, you did the right thing." I closed my eyes for a brief moment, feeling a fraction of the immense pressure lift off my shoulders. But then he added, "However, you need to prepare yourself. The family will not let this go tonight." "I am not running from this," I replied. Lawrence sighed. "You are a very strong woman, Lauren. I believe in you." And he hung up. I looked out the window. The Los Angeles sun was shining brightly, but it felt cold. I knew that this afternoon and this evening would bring the biggest battle I had ever faced. That afternoon, I left the office around 6 p.m. The LA sky darkened quickly, the streetlights flickered to life, and the 405 freeway became an endless river of red taillights. All day long, I had endured countless scrutinizing looks, whispers, and texts from close colleagues asking if I was okay. But my mind was remarkably quiet. I had done the right thing. I wasn't out to destroy anyone. I wasn't out for revenge. I was simply standing up to protect myself and protecting the company I worked for. As soon as I pulled up to the Beverly Hills gates, I knew a storm was brewing. The gates were wide open, the driveway was flooded with floodlights, and the luxury cars of every single family member were parked tightly together. It was a family meeting, but certainly not the kind where love and support are shared. I walked into the house. The smell of dinner lingered in the air, but the atmosphere was bone-chillingly cold. The entire family was seated. Martha's face was pulled tight like a guitar string, her eyes red with fury. Harper looked exhausted, but her eyes still burned with pure venom. My husband, Henry, stood awkwardly hunched over like a schoolboy called into the principal's office. Lawrence sat silently at the head of the dining table. I walked in, set my bag down, and kept my tone perfectly even. "Good evening, Mom. Dad." No one answered, not a single person. The only sounds were the clinking of spoons against bowls, the shifting of chairs, and Martha's heavy, labored breathing. I pulled out a chair and sat down. The tribunal began. Martha slammed her chopsticks down on the table. "Lauren, you have some explaining to do tonight." I didn't avoid her gaze. "What would you like me to explain, Martha?" Martha gritted out every word. "Why did you dare to demote Harper? Do you have any idea who she is?" I smiled faintly. "I know she is an employee who grossly violated corporate policy." Harper shot up out of her chair. "You," but Lawrence raised a hand, signaling for her to sit down. Martha continued, "Lauren, you are a daughter-in-law in this house. What you did humiliated this entire family. How do you think our social circle will look at us when they find out?" I replied calmly, "With all due respect, Martha, Harper's actions are what humiliated this family, not mine. I was just doing my job." Martha ground her teeth. "You are always just doing your job. Do you have any respect for anyone in this family at all?" I let out a soft breath. "If you want to discuss company business, I suggest we speak using data." The entire table fell silent for a few seconds. Harper, boiling with rage, stood up again. "Data? You want to talk about data? Fine. I am not going to let you humiliate me. She pulled out her phone and pulled up a video. It was the clip of her slapping me at the party. But what shocked me wasn't the fact that she had the video. It was the fact that the video was spreading like wildfire across internal company networks and anonymous corporate gossip forums. Over 20,000 views. Thousands of comments. Her hands were shaking. I didn't post this. Who leaked this video? I looked at her and delivered a sentence colder than ice. The person who got slapped, or the person doing the slapping? Who do you think is more afraid of this leaking? Harper was left speechless. She couldn't say another word. Henry, trying to muster whatever courage he had, finally spoke up. Lauren, do you think demoting Harper was a little too harsh? I turned to look at him. My eyes held no anger, just a profound exhaustion that had built up year after year. I want to ask you something, Henry. Was the slap she gave me yesterday too harsh? Is her earning $350,000 to fail at her job too harsh? Was her publicly humiliating me in front of 100 people too harsh? Henry's throat seized up. He blinked rapidly, wanting to say something, but the words died in his mouth. I continued, I have endured this for 3 years, but I am not going to endure it forever. Henry stared at his plate. No one could defend Harper anymore, because the undeniable truth was, she was dead wrong. Martha pointed a trembling finger straight at me. I demand that you retract that disciplinary action. You do not have the authority to do this. You are tearing this family apart. I took a deep breath, looking her dead in the eye. I am not retracting it. Martha practically shrieked. Lauren, are you trying to declare war on this entire family? I didn't blink. I am just enforcing fairness. Martha slammed her hand on the table one more time. If you don't retract it, she paused, glaring at me, speaking very slowly, then don't bother coming into the office tomorrow. The entire table gasped. Henry panicked. Mom, don't say that. Lawrence's voice went cold. Martha, you are crossing a line. But I was remarkably calm. I leaned back in my chair and enunciated clearly. I go to work based on my responsibilities and my competence. No one in this house has the authority to fire me from that company. Martha scoffed. And who do you think is keeping you in that chair? I answered instantly. Corporate bylaws. Lawrence looked at me, his eyes a mix of surprise and genuine admiration. I continued, if you want to terminate my employment, Martha, I highly suggest you follow proper HR protocols. No one said another word. Then, unexpectedly, Lawrence tapped his hand lightly against the table. He looked directly at Martha, his voice stern. Martha, I already said this. Lauren did the right thing. If you force her to retract it, you will be the one destroying the company's integrity. Martha was paralyzed. Harper's eyes went wide as saucers, completely unable to process what was happening. Henry gulped nervously. I calmly picked up my water glass and took a sip. Lawrence added, his voice low and heavy, we are having a family meeting tonight to discuss this, but the final decision will strictly follow company policy. As for Lauren, I stand by her. The room practically shattered. Harper screamed, Dad, you're playing favorites. Lawrence's voice turned dangerously hard. I am choosing what is right, not who is right. After that explosive dinner, I went up to my bedroom, thinking that the chaos was temporarily paused. But I was wrong. The real hurricane was just gathering strength. My mind was still echoing with Lawrence's voice when he defended me. It made me feel slightly warmer, but also deeply anxious. Having a husband who refused to take my side was exhausting enough. Having a mother-in-law who viewed me as a thorn in her side was draining. But an out-of-control, entitled sister-in-law was truly dangerous. I had just changed into my pajamas and was getting ready for bed when, bam! The bedroom door was violently kicked open before I could even react. Harper stormed in. Her face was ghostly pale, but her eyes were bloodshot like a wounded animal. I stood up straight. You can't just burst into my room like that, Harper. Harper pointed a finger right in my face, her voice trembling with sheer rage. Don't play the saint with me, Lauren. You're trying to destroy my life, aren't you? I crossed my arms. I am not destroying anyone. I am doing my job. Harper let out a manic, unhinged laugh. Your job? Your job as a daughter-in-law is to know your place. You don't have the right to walk all over me in that company. I looked straight into her eyes, my voice soft but unyielding. Harper, I have given you so many chances, but what did you do with them? You sabotaged yourself. Suddenly, she lunged at me, shoving me hard in the shoulder. I stumbled back a step, nearly losing my balance. She screamed, "You are not qualified to teach me a lesson." Her shrieks echoed all the way down to the first floor. Henry came sprinting up the stairs, his face ash-white. "Harper, what the hell are you doing?" But Harper was beyond reasoning. She pointed at me, manic. "She's faking it. She wants to steal this whole family, this whole company. She wants to strip all the power from us." I froze. Was that what she genuinely feared, or just some paranoid delusion? Harper wailed. "If I get demoted, it's because of her. It's all her fault." I shook my head. "The company isn't your personal playground. I don't have the power to destroy you, but I also have absolutely no obligation to cover up for your failures." Harper gritted her teeth, screaming until her voice went hoarse. "I hate you! I swear to God I will make sure you never have another day of peace in your life," Henry yelled. "Harper, you're insane!" But right at that moment, Martha came charging into the room. Seeing Harper in hysterics and me standing calmly, she immediately shrieked, "Lauren, what did you do to my daughter?" I stared at her in disbelief. "What do you honestly think I am capable of doing to her, Martha?" "I don't care. I don't want to hear it." Martha pointed at me, her voice shrill. "It is your fault. It's because of you that she is like this. You are mentally torturing her." Henry stepped between us. "Mom, that's not what happened. Harper was the one who—" But Martha cut him off savagely. "Shut up. All you do is listen to your wife." She whipped back to me. "Lauren, if anything happens to Harper, I will hold you personally responsible." A chill ran down my spine. Not out of fear, but because of the sheer, terrifying delusion in her words. I replied, my voice dropping very low. "I haven't done anything wrong." Harper sobbed hysterically. "She wants to ruin my life. She wants to drag me through the mud." Martha hugged her, patting her back like she was soothing a toddler having a tantrum. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's got you." But the glare she shot me was burning with pure hatred. Amidst the chaos, Lawrence walked into the room. "What is going on up here?" he asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Harper lunged toward him, burying her face in his chest, sobbing louder. "Dad! Lauren is trying to destroy me." Lawrence sighed deeply. "No one is destroying you, Harper. You have to take responsibility for your own work." But Harper screamed, "I don't want to take responsibility. I want things back the way they were." Everything changed the second she walked into this house. Lawrence stiffened. I remained perfectly silent. Henry stood frozen like a statue. And then, Harper blurted out a sentence that shattered everything. "If you hadn't forced Henry to marry her in the first place, none of this would be happening." I was stunned. I turned to my father-in-law. "Dad, what does that mean?" Martha turned pale and rushed to cover Harper's mouth. "Shut up," but it was too late. Lawrence looked at me, his eyes incredibly heavy. "Lauren, I will explain this to you later." My heart pounded violently. The air in the room felt suffocatingly thick. Forced to marry? What exactly did Harper mean? Was I never Henry's choice? Was there a massive, dark secret behind this entire marriage that I knew absolutely nothing about? I took a step back, a cold shiver running up my spine. "Dad, is what Harper said true?" Lawrence remained silent. Martha snapped. "It has nothing to do with what happened today. Lauren, stop digging into things." But I stared deep into my father-in-law's eyes, and I knew. There was a truth that had been buried. A truth regarding the very foundation of my marriage. A truth this entire family had hidden from me for 3 years. And now, my sister-in-law, in a fit of hysterical rage, had accidentally ripped the lid off. I felt the floor beneath me tilt. Harper stood there panting, her eyes bloodshot, glaring at me as if she wanted to tear me apart. She screamed one final thing, "This is all your fault." And then, she fainted dead away on the plush carpet. My husband's family descended into sheer panic, rushing to carry Harper down to the private medical room on the first floor. I stood alone in the hallway of the second floor, my heart racing, my mind spinning violently. Why was he forced to marry me? What was my marriage, really? And why did they hide it? Another hurricane, deeper, darker, and infinitely more dangerous, was just beginning to brew. After Harper fainted, the family scattered like a disturbed hornet's nest. Henry picked her up and rushed her down to the ground floor. Martha followed right behind, crying and cursing me out, even though I hadn't done a single thing but stand there. Lawrence maintained his composure, but the look he gave me was incredibly conflicted. I stood gripping the railing on the second-floor landing. Harper's words kept drilling into my skull like a power tool. If you hadn't forced Henry to marry her in the first place, none of this would be happening. I felt like I had just been slapped a second time, not across the face, but straight across my heart. 3 years as a daughter-in-law. 3 years of marriage. 3 years believing I was chosen out of love. But it turned out my entire marriage was built on a hidden agenda. My legs felt so light I thought I was going to collapse. At 11:45 p.m., Lawrence summoned me down to his private study. I was sitting numbly in my bedroom when my phone vibrated. "Lauren, come down to my study for a minute." His voice wasn't harsh, nor was it gentle. It was just utterly exhausted. I walked downstairs. The mahogany-paneled study was spacious, lit by a soft, warm lamp that somehow felt incredibly cold. On his desk lay a stack of documents, a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea, and an open laptop. Lawrence looked at me, his eyes calm but bottomless. "Have a seat." I sat down, lacing my fingers tightly together. He let out a long sigh. "Lauren, today has been very hard on you, hasn't it?" I answered directly, refusing to beat around the bush. "Dad, was this marriage not Henry's choice?" Lawrence closed his eyes for a few seconds. He didn't answer immediately. That silence was all the confirmation I needed, but I had to hear him say it. "Dad, I need the truth." He opened his eyes and gave a slow nod. "All right, if you want to hear it." I swallowed hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. Lawrence began. "I want to apologize to you first for keeping this from you." My spine turned to ice. He spoke slowly, enunciating every word. Back then, Henry had no intention of settling down. He was seeing someone, but they broke up because her family wasn't a strategic fit for us. My heart dropped a beat. Henry loved someone else. "But that's in the past," I muttered, looking down. I wasn't jealous, but it hurt. Lawrence continued. "After that, our corporate group went through a massive internal crisis. A rival faction on the board wanted to push our family out of majority control. I needed a highly competent wife standing behind Henry. I blinked. I started to piece the puzzle together. I saw you. A mature, capable, intelligent, grounded woman. You possessed the drive, the ethics, and the intellect. You were the perfect fit for the role of Henry's wife. My throat felt like it was closing up. So, you chose me for the company." Lawrence gave a slow nod. It was a tiny gesture, but it made my entire body go numb. I asked Henry. He hesitated. "He wasn't in love with you at the time, but I used my authority as his father and the chairman to mandate that he marry you." I felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. I tried to keep my voice from shaking. "What about me? Why didn't you ask me?" Lawrence lowered his head. "I am sorry. I know it was deeply unethical." Hot tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I asked one final question. "Did Henry ever actually want to know me? Or did he just marry me because you forced him to?" Lawrence looked me dead in the eye, not avoiding my gaze. Initially, it was because I forced him. I gripped my hands together so tightly, my nails dug into my palms. "But eventually," he continued, "Henry developed genuine feelings for you. He truly loves you, Lauren. It's just that. He is weak." Weak. I let out a bitter, hollow laugh. I already knew that, but Lawrence wasn't finished. "And there is one more thing." I looked up. His eyes were filled with profound regret. "I chose you not just for your competence," he said, "but because you were the only person I trusted to keep Henry from being completely ruined by his mother and his sister." I choked. I was wrong, my father-in-law said quietly, his voice full of self-reproach. I was wrong to turn you into a human shield for this family. That single sentence felt like the sky was collapsing on top of me. I sat completely paralyzed, my breathing shallow and heavy. It took a very long time before I could force any words out. Dad? For 3 years, I have poured my entire heart and soul into this. I never thought I was just a strategic hire. I thought Henry actually loved me. Lawrence looked at me with immense sadness. Henry does love you, Lauren, truly. But he lacks the spine to protect you. I smiled a twisted, agonizing smile. At least now I understand everything. Lawrence placed his hands flat on the desk, his voice firming up. Lauren, you are the only person in this house who possesses any sense of reason. I am asking you not to give up. I stared at him. Are you asking me to protect the company, Dad? Or protect Henry? He remained silent, and that silence was his answer. That night, I walked out of my father-in-law's study, my legs entirely numb. The long hallway stretched out, endlessly dark, the dim sconces casting weak yellow light. This massive, sprawling mansion suddenly felt colder than a morgue. My father-in-law respected me, yes, but he respected me as an asset. The ideal daughter-in-law, the brains behind Henry, the shield for his family. As for me, a woman who fell in love with a man who didn't love her from the start, fighting tooth and nail for a family that never had any intention of protecting her. I stood in front of the master bedroom door. Henry was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. I looked at him. He looked up, his lips trembling. Lauren, I'm sorry. I didn't cry, but my heart was shattering into a million pieces. I rested my hand on the doorknob but couldn't turn it. My entire body felt drained of life. This massive house, where I had tried so hard to fit in, to be a good wife, a good daughter-in-law. Everywhere I looked, it just felt freezing cold. I pushed the door open slightly. I saw Henry sitting on the edge of the mattress, his head bowed, his hands clasped tightly, shaking. He heard the door click and looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, his face utterly devastated, looking like his entire world had just collapsed. I didn't say a word. I walked in and set my purse down on the vanity. The air was so thick you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Henry stood up, looking like a guilty child. Lauren, I am so sorry. I'm sorry about what my dad said. I turned to look at him. I looked at him very, very closely. A tall, gentle, decent man, but weak. Impossibly weak. I asked, emphasizing every single word. Since the day we met, did you ever actually love me? Henry opened his mouth, but no words came out. I repeated it, my voice dropping lower. Henry, did you love me? He clenched his fists. And then, suddenly, he dropped to his knees. I was stunned. I didn't think he would do that. His voice choked up. Lauren, I love you, but... I cut him off. But your dad forced you to marry me. Henry went silent. His eyes said it all. I gave a small, agonized smile. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me live in a delusion for 3 years? Henry bowed his head until it nearly touched the floor. I was terrified that if I told you, you would leave. I looked at him, my heart feeling like it was being crushed in a vice. I deserved to know the truth from the very beginning, Henry. He burst into tears. I tried to love you. I thought if I treated you well, if I cared about you, then eventually, I would fall in love for real. So he tried to love me. He didn't actually love me. Henry collapsed onto the floor. Lauren, please believe me. I love you for real now. I love you more than anything. I slowly sat down on the edge of the bed, looking out the pitch-black window. But you didn't protect me, Henry sobbed. I know I was wrong. I looked at him. No anger, no screaming, just an overwhelming sadness. Harper slapped me. Your mother humiliated me. They treated me like dirt, and you just stood there in silence. Henry was shaking violently. I didn't know what to do. You didn't know? Or you didn't dare? Henry choked on his tears. I took a deep breath. Henry, I don't need a flawless husband. I just need a man who has the guts to stand beside me when I am being attacked. Henry grabbed his head. I am so sorry. I stood up and walked over to my closet. Henry panicked. Lauren, don't leave me. I didn't grab a suitcase. I just grabbed a cardigan. I turned back to look at him. I'm not leaving you. Henry looked up, a tiny sliver of hope flashing in his eyes. But I need space. And I need respect. He crawled over to me, grabbing my hand. Lauren, I will do whatever you want. You want me to stand up to my mom? I will. You want me to protect you? I will. Starting tomorrow. I swear to God. I sighed and pulled my hand away. Henry, promises from a weak man hold absolutely zero value. It felt like I had driven a knife straight into his chest. He grabbed the hem of my pants, weeping. I'm not weak. I was just stuck between you and my mom. I spoke slowly, delivering a sentence that made him sob uncontrollably. A man who leaves his wife standing alone in a hurricane isn't stuck. He is abandoning her. Henry collapsed, his hands shaking rhythmically on the floor. He wanted to say something, but his head was bowed to the carpet, tears dropping steadily onto the fabric. I looked at him. In 3 years, I had never seen Henry like this, but it was far too late to start over from scratch. I am not sleeping in here tonight, I said softly. Henry's voice was hoarse. Please, Lauren, please don't go. I turned and opened the bedroom door. Before stepping out into the hallway, I delivered a sentence that shattered whatever was left of his resolve. If you still cannot manage to protect your wife by tomorrow morning, then we have absolutely nothing left to discuss. I walked to the guest bedroom on the 2nd floor. The small room was brightly lit, but freezing cold. I sat down on the mattress. I didn't cry, but my heart felt like it was being pierced by 1,000 needles. Forced marriage, no choices, too scared to protect his wife, a human shield for the family. All of these horrifying realities descended on me at once, suffocating me. I asked myself, what have I been living for these past 3 years? For love? Or for a role this family cast me in? I had no answer. I lay down, my eyes wide open in the dark. In the next room, I could hear Henry crying. Downstairs, I knew Martha was still awake. In the living room, I knew Lawrence was pacing, contemplating the future of his empire. No one in this massive house could sleep, and I knew that tomorrow morning, I would have to make a final decision regarding my future and the future of this marriage. The next morning, I woke up as the first rays of California sunlight slipped through the blinds. Spending the night in the guest room left my head feeling like a block of lead, but my mind was remarkably clear. I looked around the unfamiliar room, a room I never imagined I'd have to sleep in, inside the house where I was supposedly the leading daughter-in-law. I stood up, opened the door, and stepped out into the hallway. The air in the house was unusually dead. No sounds of Martha barking orders at the maids, no sounds of Harper complaining, no sounds of Henry getting ready for work. There was only a heavy, suffocating silence hanging like a guillotine overhead. I walked downstairs. As soon as I reached the landing, I saw Henry standing at the bottom. His eyes were ringed with dark purple circles, his hair was a mess, and his face clearly showed he hadn't slept a wink. He immediately rushed over to me. Lauren, you're awake. Can we please talk? I stood up straight, crossing my arms. Talk. Henry swallowed hard. I thought about it all night. I know I messed up. I know I failed to protect you. But from today on, I promise. I cut him off. Henry, I don't need any more promises. Henry froze, his face turning ghostly pale. Lauren, please don't say that. I looked deep into his eyes. I need action. Not words. Henry was shaking. I will do it. I'll face my mom. I'll tell her that you slept in the guest room because I failed you. I swear. I shook my head. If you're only doing it now, it's far too late. Henry grabbed my arm, his voice desperate. It's not too late. If you're still standing here, it means you still want to save this. I stayed silent. I didn't argue, but I didn't agree either. I just asked one single question. Henry, if your mother forces you to choose between your wife and your family today, who do you choose? Henry choked. He looked at me, then looked up the staircase leading to his parents' suite. His eyes were filled with absolute terror. And in that exact second, I understood. No matter how much he loved me, he simply did not possess the courage. The sound of slippers dragging across the marble floor echoed through the hall. Martha walked in, her face twisted in bitter resentment after a sleepless night. As soon as she saw me, she yelled, "Lauren, why aren't you in the kitchen making breakfast?" I replied calmly, "Martha, I am not the hired help." "What did you just say?" Martha's eyes bulged. "You are the daughter-in-law, not a guest. Do you think this is a hotel?" I answered, my voice slow but razor-sharp. "If you view me as a daughter-in-law, then treat me like one. But if you view me as your maid, I will pack my bags and leave this house today." The entire house froze. Henry looked at me in sheer terror. "Lauren, don't." But I had finally said what needed to be said. Suddenly, Harper walked out from the living room. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, but her glare was as venomous as a viper's. She looked at me and smirked. "Who do you think you are? You think just because my dad defended you, you can do whatever you want?" I didn't answer. Harper stepped right into my face, lowering her voice. "Believe me, every single day you stay in this house, I will make it a living hell for you." Henry snapped. "Harper, enough." This was the first time I had ever heard Henry raise his voice at his sister. Harper glared at him, stunned. "You're taking her side?" Henry bit his lip, mustering every ounce of courage he had. "Lauren is my wife." Harper burst out laughing. "Your wife?" "The woman Dad forced you to marry." Henry looked like he had been doused in ice water. He turned to look at me, but I had absolutely no emotional reaction left to give. I spoke. "I will handle your corporate violations at the office. I am not going to discuss family drama with you, Harper. But do not ever try to degrade me with those words again." Harper sneered. "I am going to make you pack your bags and run." Martha immediately chimed in. "Don't waste your breath, Harper. If she won't listen to me, I'll throw her out myself." Henry turned pale. "Mom, you can't do that." But I stood up straight, looking at all three of them, my voice eerily calm. "No one needs to throw me out. If this is how this family views me, I can leave right now." The family was stunned into silence once again. And then, a voice echoed from the staircase behind me, freezing everyone in their tracks. "Leave? Where are you going to go?" I turned around. Lawrence was walking down the stairs, wearing a crisp white dress shirt. He looked exhausted, but incredibly alert. I clasped my hands together. "Dad, I refuse to continue living in a place where I am treated like an outsider." Martha interrupted. "Do you hear her, Lawrence? She is actively disrespecting me." Lawrence didn't even glance at her. He looked right at me. "Lauren, let me ask you one question." I stood my ground. He walked down the remaining steps, his deep voice ringing out clearly. "Are you leaving because you are hurting? Or are you leaving because you want to end this marriage?" My heart clenched. I couldn't answer immediately because the question was too raw, too direct, too deep. Lawrence stepped closer, looking straight into my eyes. "If you are just hurting, I will stand by your side. But if you want to abandon this marriage, I want to hear the reason directly from you." Martha shrieked. "Lawrence, stop defending her. She is trying to turn against this entire family." Lawrence whipped his head around and glared at Martha. She instantly shut her mouth. The whole family stood paralyzed. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Dad?" I took a deep breath. And for the first time in 3 years, I spoke the words I had never dared to say out loud. "I don't want to give up." Henry immediately grabbed my hand, his eyes lighting up. But I continued with a sentence that made his hand drop like a stone. "But I cannot survive in a marriage where I am forced to fight my battles entirely alone." Henry stood perfectly still. Martha let out a mocking scoff. Harper glared at me with pure hatred. Lawrence nodded slowly. "Then let me ask Henry." He turned to his son. "Son, starting today, do you possess the backbone required to protect your wife?" Henry froze solid. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like the room was about to combust. Lawrence delivered his final sentence. "Henry, if you cannot answer that question right now, then you are the reason you are losing your wife." I stood there, my heart pounding as if it were about to burst out of my chest. Henry was trembling, trapped in the ultimate standoff between his mother and his wife. and our marriage was standing on the absolute precipice. The air in the living room felt like wet cement. Every single family member stood rigidly, nobody daring to move an inch. I stood off to the side, Henry stood in the middle. Martha and Harper stood opposite us, and Lawrence stood in the back like a judge, presiding over a final verdict. Lawrence's question was still hanging in the air. Henry, do you possess the backbone required to protect your wife? Nobody spoke. Even the faint hum of the espresso machine in the distant kitchen sounded deafeningly loud. Henry looked at me, then at his mother, then back at me. I could see the sheer terror in his eyes, the fear of hurting his mother, the fear of family backlash, the fear of the empire collapsing, and the agonizing fear of losing me. Henry opened his mouth. Mom, Dad, everyone. His voice was trembling, on the verge of breaking. He took a massive breath, as if preparing to deliver a monumental speech. Martha immediately cut him off. Henry, you listen to me. I raised you for 30 years. She has only been here for 3. Are you really going to be an ungrateful son and turn your back on your own mother? Henry turned ghostly white. He took a step backward. I closed my eyes. I knew it. The second Martha pulled the guilt trip, Henry's spine dissolved. Harper stepped forward, gritting her teeth. If you choose her side, Henry, do not ever look at me as your sister again. Henry looked at Harper, his eyes shaking like he was being physically stabbed. Then he turned to me, his lips moving soundlessly. Lauren. I looked at him, completely unbothered. Henry. I don't need you to choose between your family or me. I just need you to distinguish between right and wrong. Harper burst into a wicked laugh. Listen to her. She is trying to manipulate him. Henry slammed his fist onto the console table. Bang! Harper, shut your mouth. This was the second time he had ever dared to yell at her. But just like every time before, it came far too late. Martha grabbed Harper's hand and turned to me. Lauren, you are the daughter-in-law. You are supposed to obey your husband and obey this family. You do not get to stand above us, I replied icily. I am not standing above anyone. But I am not going to let anyone trample me, either, Martha sneered in disgust. The girls slapped you once, and you orchestrate a massive corporate scandal over it? Who the hell do you think you are? I stared dead into her eyes. I didn't orchestrate a scandal. I enforced accountability. Henry looked at me, his eyes overflowing with agony. The truth finally shattered the dam. Henry screamed. Mom, I am so tired of this. The entire family was stunned. Henry dropped to his knees, right in the middle of the living room. I was shocked. Lawrence frowned. Martha's jaw dropped. Harper took a step back. Henry burst into tears. I am begging you, Mom. Please stop forcing me to stand in the middle of this. I stood paralyzed. I had never seen Henry like this. He continued, sobbing. I was wrong for not protecting Lauren. I know how much she has suffered. I know that the way you and Harper treat her is completely wrong. Martha shrieked. Henry, how dare you tell your own mother she is wrong? Henry brought his hands together as if begging for his life. I am begging you, Mom. I was wrong. You can hit me, you can punish me however you want, but I do not want Lauren to suffer another second of this. I felt my heart give a slight tremor. This was the very first time Henry had genuinely, unequivocally taken my side. Henry turned to me, his eyes bloodshot but fierce. Lauren, I want to protect you. I looked at him and said nothing. He continued. Starting right now, you are my absolute priority. That sentence knocked Martha completely off balance. Henry, you are insane, Harper screamed. You are betraying this family for that bitch? Henry screamed back. I am not betraying anyone. You messed up, Harper, and you have to pay the price for it. Mom, you are wrong, and you need to fix it. The house descended into absolute chaos, but I only looked at Henry. I looked at him for a long time, and then I spoke softly. Henry, thank you for saying that. Henry looked up, desperate hope flooding his face. Lauren, does that mean you forgive me? I shook my head. Henry froze. Lauren, I spoke slowly, emphasizing every single syllable. Henry, those words should have been spoken 3 years ago, not today. Henry began to shake uncontrollably. I continued. I don't need you to kneel in front of anyone. I just need you to stand beside me when I am being degraded." Henry burst into fresh tears, throwing his arms around my legs. I know I was wrong, but I'll change. Lauren, please don't leave me." I bent down and gently helped him to his feet. "I am not leaving you, but I absolutely refuse to continue living in an environment where I am constantly pushed to the brink." Martha shrieked. "What do you want? You want a divorce?" I replied, "No, but I want us to move out." The entire house froze. Henry was stunned. "Move out?" I nodded. "If you want to save this marriage, Henry, you have to learn how to live your life completely detached from your family's control." Martha slammed her hand against the wall. "Absolutely not. My son will never move out." Lawrence, who had been completely silent watching the spectacle unfold, finally spoke. "Martha, that is enough." Everyone turned to look at him. Lawrence looked at Henry and me. "If you two want to save your marriage," Lawrence said, "then moving out is the right thing to do." Martha was paralyzed. Harper's mouth hung open, utterly speechless. Henry stood swaying on his feet. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. For the first time in 3 years, I saw a clear path opening up in front of me. A path where I was no longer being controlled. After my father-in-law said, "If you two want to save your marriage, then moving out is the right thing to do," the atmosphere in the house felt like it had been flash frozen. Martha stood dead still for a few seconds, before violently slamming her fist against the console table. "Lawrence! Are you trying to kill me?" she shrieked. Her voice was shaking, not out of sorrow, but out of uncontrollable, explosive rage. Lawrence replied with absolute composure. "I want my son to have a normal, functioning marriage, not a daily war zone." Harper jumped in. "Dad, if Henry moves out, what about me? How am I supposed to show my face in this house?" Lawrence shot her a look as cold as steel. "You need to worry about your employment status first." Harper's face turned a violent shade of purple. In that moment, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Henry stood there in a daze, as if he couldn't believe that moving out was actually a viable option. I maintained my calm and said, "If Henry is willing, I will find us an apartment today." Henry stammered, "Lauren, that fast?" I looked at him. "If we are going to change, Henry, we change right now. No more delays." He bit his lip, then gave a firm nod. "Okay, I'm with you," Harper scoffed. "You are literally betraying this family." I turned to her. "No one is betraying anyone. Adults need their own space for a marriage to survive." Harper rolled her eyes. "You sound so noble. Look at him. He's totally brainwashed by you." Martha screamed. "I will never agree to this." She pointed a vicious finger right at me. "Lauren, if you drag Henry out of this house, I swear to God, you will never be allowed to set foot on this property ever again." I looked at her with perfect serenity. "Don't worry, Martha. I won't be coming back to ask you for anything." That sentence pierced her ego like a dagger. Henry panicked. "Lauren, please don't speak to my mom like that." I looked at Henry, my expression dead serious. "I am not insulting her, but I am also never letting anyone insult me again." Lawrence stepped between us, his voice stern. "Martha, I have made my decision. They are moving out." Martha choked on a sob. "Lawrence, you want to tear our family apart?" "No," he said. "I want to save him." Martha let out a bitter, acidic laugh. "Save him? You think moving out is going to save their marriage? Or do you just want Lauren to drag Henry away so she can control him easier?" I was stunned. She actually believed I was manipulating Henry? I let out a dry laugh. "You're overthinking it, Martha. If I wanted to control Henry, I would have done it years ago." Martha pointed at me, shaking with fury. You are an absolute snake in the grass." Henry yelled. "Mom! Stop insulting Lauren!" "Shut up, Henry," Martha screamed. "What is so great about her? What does she have that makes you defend her like this?" Henry looked at his mother, then looked at me. His eyes were completely resolute. It was the first time I had ever seen that kind of certainty in him, because she is my wife, and she is the one who has suffered for my sake for 3 years. Martha was left completely speechless. Amidst the extreme tension, Harper suddenly burst into a cold, bizarre laugh. "Whatever. Lauren, you moving out is perfect, because you're not going to have a face to show at the company much longer anyway. I furrowed my brow. What is that supposed to mean? Harper crossed her arms, tilting her chin up with profound arrogance. Did you think demoting me was the end of the story? I stayed silent. Harper smirked. Let me enlighten you. I just submitted a formal grievance to the board of directors demanding your immediate removal from the HR department. Henry and Lawrence both whipped their heads toward her simultaneously. What? Harper continued, her voice dripping with triumph. I submitted it to the board. I formally accused you of abusing your executive authority to enact a personal vendetta. I slightly raised an eyebrow. Ah, so this was her counterattack. And what evidence do you have? Harper laughed out loud. Evidence? You slapped me across the face with a demotion inside the company. You formally accused me of professional misconduct. That is more than enough to claim a hostile work environment, I replied calmly. Did you forget the video of you slapping me? Harper paused for a half-second before laughing even harder. I already had someone leak that video online. Now we both look terrible. But you're the wealthy daughter-in-law. People will just say you're a petty, vindictive bitch. I stood perfectly still. Henry was horrified. Lawrence was so furious, his hands began to shake. You have made a catastrophic mistake, Harper, Lawrence growled. Harper put her hands on her hips. I am not making a mistake. I am just not going to let her walk all over me. I looked at Harper and spoke slowly. Do you honestly think the board of directors is going to side with you? Did you forget that they have your entire, disastrous performance portfolio? Harper sneered. If you get removed from HR, you lose your power. And then, I'm coming for you. It was a blatant, explicit threat. Martha patted Harper's shoulder. Good job, sweetie. I didn't lose my temper. I just smiled. You submitted a grievance to the board, Harper? Good for you. That's fantastic. Everyone looked confused. Because, I continued, I submitted my formal disciplinary petition against you to the board first thing this morning. The entire family froze. Harper's jaw dropped. You what? I went on, my voice like steel. My file contains concrete data, missed KPIs, written client complaints, emails proving your insubordination, and the video of you physically assaulting me. Your file contains your hurt feelings. Harper turned ghostly white. Lawrence looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine, unadulterated respect in his eyes. Harper's brilliant counterattack was dead on arrival. Martha began to tremble. Lauren, I followed corporate protocol, I said, my voice completely steady. If the board wants me to step down, I will gladly step down. But before I leave, I am ensuring the board prosecutes every single one of Harper's violations to the fullest extent. No one said another word. Harper looked like she was about to collapse. Henry, for the first time in his life, made a unilateral decision. He stepped into the middle of the room and grabbed my hand. Lauren, I'm going with you. We're moving out. His declaration rang through the suffocatingly thick air like a church bell. I turned slightly to look at him. For the first time in 3 years, Henry wasn't shaking. He wasn't avoiding eye contact. He wasn't glancing nervously at his mother. He stood tall, his shoulders broad, his voice certain. Martha let out a blood-curdling shriek. Henry, you're choosing her over us? Henry turned to his mother and spoke with absolute clarity. I am not choosing Lauren over you. I am choosing my marriage. That sentence caused the entire empire to crumble. Martha collapsed into her chair. Harper sank onto the sofa. Lawrence gave a firm nod of approval. And for the very first time, I felt that this marriage actually had a fighting chance. After Henry's declaration, I am choosing my marriage, the mansion descended into sheer pandemonium. Martha slumped into her armchair, her eyes wide, stammering. Henry, you are really turning your back on me? Henry let out a heavy sigh. Mom, I am not turning my back on you, but I cannot let my wife continue to suffer alone. Harper shrieked. She destroyed this family. Are you blind? I stood perfectly calm. I didn't engage with a single one of their insults. I had finally realized something. When people in a family have fundamentally decided to hate you, nothing you say will ever change their minds. The only thing you can do is walk right past them. Lawrence spoke up. My decision stands. The two of you will move out. The corporate matters will be handled strictly by the book. Martha practically writhed in her chair. Lawrence, do not push my son away. No one is pushing him away, Lawrence replied sternly. You and Harper are the ones driving him out. Harper choked on her words. Dad, you're playing favorites. Lawrence looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with profound disappointment. Harper, you are a corporate employee. You are not a princess. Harper burst into tears and ran up the stairs. Martha watched her go, then whipped her head around to glare at me. You are going to regret this. I gave a polite, shallow bow. I wish you the best of health, Martha. It was a perfectly polite farewell, but it only infuriated her more. That afternoon, Henry and I packed up and left the Beverly Hills estate. I threw my things into a suitcase incredibly fast. Henry helped me pack, his face still pale and his eyes puffy from crying for 2 days straight, but his gaze was unusually resolute. He whispered, Lauren, I'm going to change. I'm going to learn how to be a real husband. I looked at him. Henry, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to stand by my side when I am vulnerable. Henry pulled me into a tight embrace, his body trembling slightly. I owe you for the last 3 years. From now on, I will make it up to you every single day. On our drive to our new place, I looked back on my 3 years of marriage. Henry gripped the steering wheel tightly, while I stared out the passenger window, watching the massive mansion shrink into the distance. I asked, Henry, do you have any regrets? No. I offered a faint smile. Even if your mom hates you? Henry tightened his grip on the wheel. Lauren, if I can't protect my own wife, what right do I have to call myself a man? A good son doesn't allow his mother to turn his wife into a punching bag. That was the sentence that finally made me cry. For the first time, I truly saw Henry as an adult. Our new place was a fresh start. We rented a modest, 2-bedroom apartment in Pasadena. It was vastly smaller than his family's estate, but it was warm and incredibly quiet. On the first day we moved in, Henry completely surprised me. He grabbed a broom and swept the floors, Windexed the windows, installed the curtain rods, and assembled the bed frame with an Allen wrench, not skipping a single task. I watched him in awe. You know how to do all this? Henry laughed. No. But for you, I'm learning. I burst out laughing. A genuine, hearty laugh after so many dark days. That evening, Henry cooked our very first meal in the new apartment. The food was oversalted and slightly burnt, but to me, it tasted like a Michelin star dinner. We sat and ate together. No shouting, no passive-aggressive remarks, no one interfering. Just a true husband and wife. Later that night, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was the final verdict from the board of directors. The board has reviewed the documentation. Demotion of Harper to project coordinator assistant is confirmed. At the exact same time, a follow-up email arrived. The grievance filed against Lauren has been deemed invalid and lacks substantive evidence. Dismissed. I felt an immense wave of relief. Not because I had won, but because justice and fairness had finally been restored. Henry looked at my screen, then pulled me into his arms. You are incredible, Lauren. I rested my head on his shoulder. No, I just did the right thing. A week later, the company issued a secondary notice. Harper was officially suspended without pay for 30 days, pending a disciplinary review for intentionally leaking internal corporate video footage online. Harper was so humiliated and panicked that she refused to show her face at the office, hiding out at her mother's house. Martha called Henry incessantly. Henry, please, I'm begging you, bring Lauren back to the house. Harper is in shock. She's been crying all day. Henry replied calmly, Mom, leave Harper to face the consequences of her own actions. I cannot save someone who is actively destroying herself. I overheard the conversation, and I knew Henry had genuinely, irrevocably changed. In the end, the marriage was saved, and the bride reclaimed her identity. A month after moving out, Henry and I were more in sync than we had ever been. No more interference from my mother-in-law, no more toxic jealousy from Harper, no more nights where I cried myself to sleep. One evening, Henry wrapped his arms around me and asked softly, "Lauren, do you ever still think about leaving me?" I looked at him, feeling perfectly at peace. "No, because you finally became the husband I always hoped you would be." Henry kissed my forehead. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. "I didn't give up on you. I just gave up on the family that was destroying me." Henry held me tighter. And in that moment, I knew. This marriage had finally found its true orbit, not through vicious corporate warfare, but through the sheer courage of both of us. I fought through my resentment. Henry fought through his fear, and we both chose to walk forward together. A true happiness. No one interfering, no one pulling the strings, no one making me shed another tear. Just me and Henry. Two people, standing together, with absolutely no one standing in between. The lesson of the story. A marriage is not solely built on love. It is built on respect, empathy, and the ability to stand by each other when it truly matters. No matter how strong a woman is, she still has moments of exhaustion and vulnerability. And what she needs in those moments isn't a flawless, wealthy man who speaks in poetry. What she needs is a husband who has the courage to shield her from the hurricane, a man who dares to protect his wife from insults and dares to choose her when she is hurting. If a husband constantly stands in the middle, if he allows his mother, his sister, or his relatives to dictate his life, the person who suffers the most is the wife standing beside him. And ultimately, he will end up destroying his own family. Happiness doesn't come from living in a sprawling mansion with endless luxury. Happiness comes from finding a place of profound peace, a place where a husband and wife know how to hold each other's hands and possess the courage to walk through any external pressure. Life sometimes forces us to face agonizing choices, the family we came from or the family we are building. And the right choice is always the one that allows your marriage to survive. This story has a beautiful ending because both individuals found the courage to change. They found the courage to let go of toxic environments and the courage to hold on to each other. That is what makes a true family. If you enjoyed this grounded, emotional story filled with life lessons and raw human experiences, and share it so others can enjoy it as well. Your support is our greatest motivation to continue bringing you meaningful stories rich in humanity, helping us all reflect on life and cherish the things we currently have. Thank you for following along with our story. We will see you in the next episode.